programmed under white conditions. The human imagination is a remarkable and powerful tool that shapes our reality. It allows us to expand our thoughts and new ideas, creating solutions for a better future. Imagination is the GPS to life, love, and the pursuit of happiness. It is our central nervous system. According to the science of metaphysics, it controls our health. It enables us to empathize with others, understand different perspectives, and foster connection. Imagination fuels our dreams and aspirations, motivating us to pursue them. It transcends boundaries and limitations, allowing us to envision possibilities beyond what currently exists. The power of imagination lies in its ability to inspire, transform, and propel us forward towards innovation and progress. It is extremely delicate, and one must be careful of how it is programmed. What it is programmed with, we believe it to be reality.
Pretty much all of us have been taught by white people, who've 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 been taught by white people, taught by white people, using textbooks written for, about white people. You pretty much only ever had white teachers. So if you're white, you were relentlessly reflected at the front of the room, and you could get through graduate school without having a teacher of color, right? Or maybe one, maybe two. And if you're a person of color, rarely, if ever, did you see yourself reflected at the front of the room. These teachers are now in the position to decide who's smart, who belongs where, who should be punished for what. And we see this empirically in the outcomes of tracking, special ed referrals, punishment, expulsion, the school to prison pipeline.
Most of us are trapped inside our mind for not being able to accept the truth that will set us free. In today's times, can the truth be any clearer than it is now?
We have the rising cost of inflation, food, water, and the air being poisoned, hundreds of companies closing their stores, AI replacing people, so much truth being exposed in Hollywood, and men and women have never been more divided.
Can you show me the doll that you like best or that you'd like to play with?
This one. I like that one.
Show.
Okay.
This one.
That one?
This one. I like to play with this.
And can you show me the doll that is the nice doll? And why is that the nice doll?
She's white.
And can you show me the doll that looks bad? Okay. And can you and why does that look bad?
Because it's black.
And why do you think that's a nice doll?
Because she's white.
And can you give me the doll that looks like you? "15 out of the 21 children preferred the white doll."
How did we get here?
The education system as we presently know it, Rock, came into existence. It didn't even exist until after slavery. The present system came into existence, and one of the primary reasons it came into existence was to educate the offsprings of slaves, to be able to give them an educational opportunity. Mm-hmm. And they structured it so that basically that it would be, even though it would be a manual education, manual art training, but it did come into existence. And to a large degree, black folk contributed to the development of those school systems. They worked hard to build those schools, selling flowers, pies, cooks, and cakes, and building with their own hand. And that was like in 1866. In 1866, keep in mind that up until that point, we had laws in this country that forbade the educating of a black person. Yeah. You get caught teaching a black person to read and write would cost you $100 and 39 lashes with a whip to be caught teaching a black person to read and write. We black folk were suffering from imposed ignorance. They were being mandated to be ignorant, and if they weren't physically or in fact ignorant, they had to act and pretend they were dumb. They had to dumb down.
Many of us find ourselves in a state of cognitive dissonance, feeling uncomfortable because our beliefs don't align with our values. Cognitive dissonance is a psychological phenomenon that occurs when a person holds two contradictory beliefs at the same time. On August 20th, 1619, African Angolans kidnapped by the Portuguese arrived in the British colony of Virginia and were then bought by English colonists. The arrival of the enslaved Africans in the New World marks the beginning of 2.5 centuries of slavery in North America. One of the ships used to transport the enslaved was called Jesus of Lubeck. The last slave ship came to America in 1860. Slavery was officially abolished by the 13th Amendment, which took effect on December 18, 1865. John Smith, born 1554, died August 28, 1612 in Sturton-le-Steeple, United Kingdom, created the Baptist religion in 1608. These dates are significant. 2024 minus 1608 equals 416 years of slavery, and we are still proud to be Christians. Based on the evidence, there is no criteria for being a Christian. The only requirement is saying it, and most people will invite you right into their homes with militia in their hearts and weapons behind their backs. Could this be the reason for poverty, broken homes, sickness, and wars? Those who lie, steal, rape, and kill look exactly like those we are waiting to save us. Religiously and politically. You would think that being a Christian starts with what Jesus stood for: helping the less fortunate and justice for all. Nope. You would think that love for one another would be important. Nope. You would think that it starts at home by being a good spouse or parent. Nope. How did we get here? 416 years of programming. Let's start with white Jesus. How far does he go back if the letter J was not created until 1524? The King James Version of the Geneva Bible was published in 1611. Jesus was created just in time for slavery, and we've been waiting for his return ever since. Have you noticed that wherever you see the cross symbol, it is connected to evil or death, like the burning cross of the Ku Klux Klan? And the cross Jesus was allegedly crucified on, to name a few. Look at the uniformed crosses lined up in a military cemetery of the soldiers who lost their lives fighting for what? These are our family members. It is symbolic in the scariest movies like The Exorcist,
The Omen.
Carrie,
Help the sinning woman see the sin of her days and ways.
Not too long ago, evangelical Christians used to get out of church on Sunday and head to the nearest lynching to collect body parts of the dead. They were specifically programmed to lack empathy and disregard any human life that did not resemble their own. Who is King James, and why do we read from his version of the Bible? First, he was a slave trader. Second, he was bisexual, had lots of lovers, and hated women. He is also the author of a book titled Demonology, available on Amazon $9.99. This book talks about how women were demons and witches, killing thousands, including his mother. After writing that book, he went on to translate his version of the Geneva Bible, publishing it in 1611. Anyone caught with the Geneva Bible, which was published in 1560, faced serious consequences. Only the popes were allowed to have it. Not only did he rewrite the Geneva Bible, but he removed the Apocrypha, the Book of Enoch, and many others. He made it to where his version of the Bible supported slavery, with verses like, Ephesians 5, Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear, and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. Verse 6, obey them not only to win their favor when their eyes is on you, but as slaves of Christ, doing the will of God from your heart. 7, serve wholeheartedly as if you were serving the Lord, not people. Colossians 3:22, slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything, and do it, not only when their eye is on you and to curry their favor, but with sincerity of heart and reverence for the Lord. 1 Peter 2:18, slaves, in reverent fear of God, submit yourselves to your masters, not only to those who are good and considerate, but also to those who are harsh. 19, for it is commendable someone bears up under the pain of unjust suffering, because they are conscious of God. We have been divided into religious groups for mind control and self-destruction by a group of people who have been here for less than 7,000 years. Relationships are our most significant resources for understanding life and ourselves. Religion teaches us to fear one another, kill one another, and not trust ourselves but trust the enemy.
The whole history of America is the history of rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. It starts in the colonies of what would become the United States. Let's remember, during the colonial period, mid-1600s, there was no such thing as white people. I know some people who are now called white find that shocking, right? Because they think whiteness is real, right? But whiteness was created. Europeans didn't call themselves white. We didn't call ourselves white. We weren't all members of one big happy family. Are you kidding? Have you studied the history of Europe? The history of Europe was about killing each other. That's what we did in Europe. We just killed each other before we figured out there were other people to kill. We just killed each other, right? I mean, that was the history of Europe. The English hated the Irish, right? Northern Italians didn't even think that Southern Italians were Italians. The Germans hated everybody, and everybody hated their ass right back, right? There was no team called white, no race called white, but all of a sudden, in the middle of the 1600s, there was. Why? Why was it suddenly necessary to create this thing called the white race? Well, because rich people can count, that's why. And so rich folks looked around, the ones that owned all the land, you know, in the colonies, the colonial elite looked around and they realized something, that they were heavily outnumbered by African enslaved folks, by European indentured servants who were just one level above a slave, or other Europeans who weren't technically indentured servants, but they were still peasants, didn't have any money, didn't have any land, and they could do the math. They added it up and they were like, damn, we got to figure out a way to split these folks apart from one another or they're going to rise up and take our stuff, right? Because after a while, these black folks who were enslaved Africans and these quote unquote white folks who were poor Europeans are going to figure out they're all getting played by these rich people, right? So ultimately the rich figure out they got to come up with some way to get somebody in that group on their team. The easiest thing is to get the poor Europeans, right? Because at least they look like you. They sort of share some of the customs and the culture. So they all of a sudden create this thing called whiteness and they say, now you're part of the club. Now we're going to let you testify in court, enter into contracts, vote, at least if you're a man, own a little bit of land, at least if you're a man, right? And we're going to get rid of indentured servitude. No more of that, because you're too good for that. And we're going to take the white men, now called white men, and put them on the slave patrol to keep black people in line. Give them a horse and a gun and a badge and make them feel big and powerful, right? They're still poor. They still don't have anything. They didn't pay the slave patrol well. Right? Just exploited them, used them as a buffer between the elite and the other poor folks, particularly poor folks of color. And pretty soon the rebellions that occasionally happened where black and white got together to overthrow the elite, those stopped because the divide and conquer had begun to work, right? You could turn people against each other by telling those poor white folks, they got to keep these black people in line. And so that divide and conquer gets initiated in the colonies, rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown.